Serious, cops of Reddit. When was a time someone talked themselves into a ticket? My brother's story, not mine. There's a guy, call him Larry. He's known to the local PD, the usual redneck with a drinking problem stuff. One night, Larry backed into a utility pole while drunk and lost his license for 2 years. He would have his wife or kids drive him places. A few months into Larry's suspension, bro is sitting in his car one night and sees Larry's truck go by. It's easy to pick out because it was never fixed after hitting the pole. There are 2 people in it, but he doesn't know who is driving. The truck was doing about 10 over, so bro decided to pull him over. By the time he gets out onto the road and finds the truck, it's already parked in a gas station. Bro waited by the car, thinking he would just give the driver a warning. Larry and his wife walk out of the gas station and see bro. Larry, you gotta tell your wife to slow down. Well, officer bro, my wife wasn't driving. I was. Damn it, Larry, you know you can't be driving. But since I can't prove it was you, just have her drive home and we'll call this a warning. If I catch you driving, you know it's your butt. Sure, thanks. Larry then proceeded to get in the driver's seat and drive off, while my brother was still parked next to him. Bro pulled him over before he was even out of the parking lot and took him to jail. Frickin' Larry. Pulled a guy over for registration sticker being out. Several months out. I ask him why this hasn't been taken care of and he states he has a bet with a friend that he can go 2 years without a ticket. I said, well, you just lost that bet. Man, my husband just got a ticket for his registration being expired by 1 day. He had just gotten the election done and it takes a day to refresh in the system so you can renew online. Yes, he should have done it earlier in the month, but dang, 1 day. I watched a guy talk his way into a contempt charge and then 90 days in jail. Was an animal control officer. 2 dogs roaming on a busy street and in front of a university. I cannot for the life of me catch these dogs. I call for another officer to assist. While I'm waiting, I pull out my camera, snap photos of the dogs sitting in front of university sign, almost getting hit by a car, on neighbors' porches, etc. Owner shows up, corrals his dogs. I write him a stray roaming to and proof of rabies. No big deal. Show up to court, bring your proof, admit your dogs got out, pay your $75 fine and go on with your life. Well, this guy had other plans. He hired a lawyer. I had my case file with all my pictures nicely labeled. Owner swear his dogs had not been running loose. Judge asks for my file and a description of his dogs. He describes his dogs and they're the ones in the picture. Judge gives him another chance. He swears he has no idea why he's here and those aren't his dogs. Judge flips my file to his dog sitting in front of university sign and asks if that's his dog. A man admits it's his dog, but I snuck over after work when he was walking his dogs to snap pictures of them. Judge is not amused. He orders the guy put in contempt for lying. Judge then asks for proof of rabies vaccination. Guy says he has it but he didn't bring it because he didn't think they were his dogs. Judge is not amused as he flips through my file. He sees dog almost get hit and is a public nuisance on busy street. Sees other dog chilling on neighbor's porch. The best of all, judge asks if this is the first time the dogs have ever gotten out. Owner swears it is. Then judge flips to about 8 notarized statements and our complaint log sheet showing multiple neighbors have called about his dogs being loose. The judge gets very mad and orders the guy 90 days plus contempt. I didn't say anything but thank you for your time. I would hate to be that guy explaining why he is doing time. We normally give other cops, firemen, or paramedics a break and don't write them. I pulled a car over for doing easily 60 in a 35. I got to the door and he rudely announced I'm a firefighter. Oh, alright, you have your MFD and license, hands it to me, cool, slow down a little. Okay, being a firefighter doesn't give you a pass to drive crazy all the time. Yeah it does, I can drive however I want. Oh really? Sit tight for me, press hard. 3 copies dummy. Dang Skippy, he not only asked for it, he almost demanded you write him up. Polite breeds polite. As a firefighter and first responder I can only say thank you. A guy I know is a police officer. He is on patrol late on a Friday night and gets the call that a cabbie has a drunk woman in his cab. She puked all over the cab, refuses to pay, refuses to get out, My friend goes to the scene and the cab driver says he doesn't even give a dang if he gets paid at this point. Just get this woman out of my cab. My friend decides to be lenient and calls the drunk woman another cab. He explains to her that she has to get out of this cab and another one will take her home. New cab shows up. He tells the woman it is time to go. She gets up, walks back to the patrol car and gets in the back seat. My friend goes over and says, "This car doesn't go to your house. This car goes to jail. If you get in that other car, you can go home." The drunk lady tells him to go frick himself and she isn't getting out. He tries again. "This car doesn't go home. The car does. This car goes to jail. Are you sure this is where you want to be?" She tells him to frick off and he says good enough and hauled her off to jail. This is just lovely. It was probably fun explaining the previous night's interaction when she was let out the next morning. I always decided before I approached the vehicle whether or not the person was getting a ticket. I had no quota and it wasn't going to gain me any brownie points for writing a dumb ticket for 5 miles per hour over. I wrote speeding tickets at 15 over. Heck, sometimes, if I was in a particularly good mood, I'd even give out warning tickets for that. The only person that ever really earned my wrath passed me in a no passing zone and cut me off. Because I was doing the speed limit, brake checked me, gave me the finger, then rolled through a stop sign and turned right on red without stopping. I was in an unmarked car. He probably would have done more stupid stuff if I'd kept following him. If that's not asking for it, I don't know what is. I hooked him up. Speeding, no passing, failure to stop X2. It was close to $400 in fines. I hope he wasn't in a hurry because it takes a long time to write 4 tickets. The only other time I considered deviating from my rule was when I pulled over a lady and she proceeded to explain to me at great volumes how I couldn't write her a ticket because her husband was a sergeant major and outranked me. I was very tempted to show her that I could, in fact, write her but a ticket. I was very tempted to show her that I could, in fact, write her but a ticket. Should have done it, man. UK. Walked to a pub after a bit of a pushing and shoving match between friends. All sorted and walked away. As myself and 2 other colleagues were doing so, a guy shouts at us. Completely unprovoked or warranted. From a distance of 5-6 feet, "Dirty fricking pigs," we tell him to stop swearing. He says, "What are you going to do? Arrest me for drunk and disorderly, you fricking black bastards?" He was then arrested for being drunk and disorderly. He also had 3 grams of C in his pocket. Completely avoidable if he'd have just kept his mouth shut. LOL, why on earth would you start crap with a cop when you're in possession of something illegal? I tried to talk myself into a ticket once. I'm a respiratory therapist who once worked in a small hospital, and we didn't have 24-hour on-site coverage. RTs were on call between 11:30 PM to 6 AM. My pager went off one morning about 3 AM or so, and so I had to go in. I put on my scrubs and left. I lived 26 miles away at the time, so I know if I hit all the lights right, I'll get there in 40 minutes. At one section, there's a bunch of shopping centers on either side of the highway, and the lights are cycling. The parking lots are completely empty and I approach this one light that just turned red. I see there are no cars trying to go into the road, so I go through the red light. Needless to say, I get stopped. When the cop approached my car, I gave him my license and registration and said to him, "Officer, I know I went through a red light. I have to go to this hospital and put a patient on a ventilator. Here is my pager with the number of the hospital to verify this. Please give me my ticket so I can go on my way." He looks at my license and registration, looks at my pager, and sees I'm wearing scrubs and my work badge. He shakes his head and says, "You have to drive 26 miles? That's crazy. Go, but don't go through any more red lights," and gives me back my license and registration. I like this. He knows what you did. You know what you did. You were honest about it and were willing to take the consequences of your actions whilst your main concern still being your patient. He respects you saving lives, respects the crazy nature of your job and doesn't want to frick you over whilst doing amazing work, even if it is justified. Good on you both. not talked into a ticket but blatantly did something whilst driving in front of me which got them arrested. I work in a large city in the UK and it was 1 AM. I was driving down a 2-lane main route which goes from the city centre all the way out. I am driving behind a car which is sticking to the speed limit when the two of us catch up to a third car which is in front of us and was doing maybe 5-10 miles per hour under the limit. Driving under the speed limit always got me suspicious. The car in front of me pulls into the outside lane and goes to overtake the third car which then blatantly swerves in front of the car to block them overtaking. I mentally exclaimed WTF before hitting the lights and pulling over the third car. The good driver carries on their way. In my mind I imagined them for once being happy there was a police car behind them. Sure enough, third car is a drink driver. Gets arrested. Usually I have to find these folks, but hey, if they want to advertise themselves to me I'm cool with that. I imagine the drunk driver saw the headlights behind him moving off to one side, didn't realize he was trying to pass, and thought oh frick I'm way off center, and swerved to be back in line with the car trying to pass. Source: Driver's ed warned us of drunk driver behavior like this. I worked at the gate entrance to a military post. One night 3 military policemen were helping us check IDs. A truck with 2 females and 2 males pulled up at about 2:30 AM. The women were married to soldiers, dependent IDs, and the males were soldiers but not their spouses. One in the back was being a little loud and attracted a cop over to the truck. He started asking her questions and she started blabbing about how much she drank. Then she goes on to say she gave one of the males alcohol. He was under the age of 21, but it was okay because he lived with her. All 4 were arrested. Also I had to search the loud woman because she said her ID and cigarettes were in her bra. I found her cigarettes right away but after some searching, couldn't find her ID. I asked her when was the last time she had it and she said she handed it to the driver at the gate. I totally searched through her boobs for nothing. For nothing. There's a flaw in this story. I almost always just give warnings for traffic offenses because it's a small part of my job. Also I will only pull you over if it's blatant, running a red light, blowing through a stop sign etc. But if you argue or play dumb, you're getting a ticket. If you just say yeah my bad, zero chance you are getting a ticket from me. I wish cops like you existed where I am from. Here, they sit on the highway with their radar guns trying to pull people over for doing as little as 6 miles per hour over. Central PA boys, keep us safe. My cousin, yes my cousin not me, got pulled for a missing turning light. He was so stoned he got scared and told policemen that he just smoked a fat joint. He lost his driver's license for 2 years. Luckily no jail time. Not me but a friend. He was riding around with some people while smoking some pot. A cop pulled them over because a blinker light was broken. Pot charges because the blinker was broke. For a brief period of time, my father was a police officer. If he saw military base passes on the windshield of the car or something else signifying the driver was military, he would let them off with a warning unless the driver was being a dong or dangerous. This was after 9/11 and everything was tense for everyone. He pulled over a car because they were speeding at least 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. He told them that there were a lot of deer in the area and told him to slow down so he didn't hit anything. As he was about to send the guy on his way, the guy got belligerently angry about my father wasting his time. The guy told him to go frick himself and he knew what he was doing and several other things. After a few minutes, my father asked for his license and proof of insurance again and thoroughly ran the plates. Found the guy had his license suspended about a month earlier. He ended up writing the guy up for speeding, endangerment, and driving with a suspended license. A drunk outside a bar causing a minor disturbance who refuses to get in a cab to go home. Dumbest pathway to a holding cell. I know a dude who got kicked out of a bar. He kept trying to come back and so the cops got called. Cops told him to leave. He did. Literally 5 minutes later he goes back. Cops charge him with DC. Coming home from work at 3 AM past a cop going probably about 60 in a 40. Knew right away that I was going to get pulled over as I saw him hit the brakes around the corner. I pull over knowing that anything else would be asking for trouble. As I wait for him to pull up behind me, I ask myself what the ticket is going to cost me and if speeding home for sleep at this point was even worth it. Officer comes to the window. Where you coming from and where you going? Double quote. I'm home and I'm coming from work. Where do you work? The Hilton? What do you do there? Here comes the frick me moment. I am a bartender. Please step out of the car, sir. I step out, asks me all the questions about whether or not I have been drinking. I hadn't, even though I just did a wedding and the groom's dad had been trying to do shots with me all night. Even to the point of asking my manager if it was okay. She told him no, it's against company policy etc etc. Anyway, police officer asks me to blow into the breathalyzer. I do the test, comes back 0.0 as I hadn't had a drop. Before I can apologize for speeding, officer says, "Have a good night, that's all I ask," confused. He walks away and says, "Yeah, slow down, I have to go catch some real bad guys." I'll never forget it. Drove below the speed limit the rest of the ride home. Pulled a guy for an expired registration. I get to the window and see that the guy is dang near 80. So my first thought is, old guy just forgot. I'll remind him and send him on his way. He immediately greets me with, "What the frick do you want?" I was working a DUI checkpoint as a police explorer while in high school. I used to work these kind of events all the time, and sometimes officers tended to be forgiving and let people go if they didn't have their driver's license. On this day, a man was sent into the pit, where officers send the cars of those with violations, because he didn't have his license on him. He claimed he was on his way home from the store. His story checked out due to the groceries in his car. We were about to let him go when he tells us he remembers his driver's license number. He gives it to us. It comes back with a warrant for his arrest, and now we have to search his car. We find speed and a pipe to smoke it out of, and so we bust him for that. Piece of advice: quit when you're ahead. Heard this about a friend of a friend, so it may be BS. But apparently a cop was on front desk duty due to an injury when a man drove up, came in and asked for directions somewhere. The cop could tell the man had been drinking, so he held him for a breathalyzer, which was positive. So he's now proud of the fact he got a DUI arrest while on desk duty. Friend was pulled over for speeding in rural South. Cop says no one goes that fast through my town. Friend responds, Sherman did. Spent the night in jail. Murderers tend to life though. I watched my friend talk himself into a pie. It was spring break years ago at a popular beach. We were in high school and underage, but just don't be an idiot and the cops will leave you alone. Well, we were riding in the back of a truck, driving down the beach trying to meet girls. We see a group of girls from our high school. One of these girls said some very mean things about our friend when he was in the hospital after a car wreck. Another friend decides he is going to defend his buddy's honor by hurling obscenities and being generally aggressive towards her. A cop, noticing the commotion, approaches us, asks us what our problem is. I apologize for my friend and explain that he was just hitting on these girls and I will get him to chill out and lower his voice etc. At this point my buddy starts defending his actions to the cops, telling them the real story, trying to drunkenly explain the high school drama that has him so riled up. Well, he got arrested for a pie shortly after. When I was pregnant with my second baby, I was experiencing high blood pressure and was told to watch for the warning signs of preeclampsia. As many will know, one of the signs is visions problems and experiencing auras or unusual lights. So I wake in the early dawn in panic when I realize that the room is filled with flashing lights. After allowing a couple of minutes to come round, I realize it's from a patrol car. So being a nosy bee, I have a look out the window. Out there were two police cars with their lights on and a paddy wagon, the latter of which was discharging my very drunk neighbor. This bloke was several sandwiches short of a picnic. Heck, TBH, he was missing the full freaking hamper. Years before, so I heard told, and I had no reason to disbelieve my source, he deliberately chopped his fingers off in an industrial accident so he could claim the compensation. He never worked since then, claiming disability. I guess operating on his 3 surviving brain cells was a disability. He was a semi-functioning alcoholic who lived in a hoarder's house. More trash than treasures, with his equally insane wife. His daughter was even loonier, but that's another tale. Anyhow, idiot neighbor had gone for his regular Saturday night pee up and had crossed paths with the local plod. I would imagine that most of them knew him by name. They were doing the courtesy of bringing him home rather than slinging in him the cells, although I'm not sure his wife would agree with their thinking. But his final 3 brain cells were obviously drunk as heck because he fought them every which way he could. And to their credit, the plot did their damnedest to get him safely into his house. Eventually they gave up, threw him in the back of the wagon and touted him back to the cells. A few days later I saw his name in the papers to show up for court for a drunken disorderly. Wow, that sounds a lot like Shameless the TV series. My ex's dad was a reservist and one night they were busy patrolling around town. Guy A looked shady so they pulled over and talked to the guy. So along comes Guy B and is quite up in their faces and looking what they're doing. Eventually they tell him to stand against the wall and search him. They found M and weed on him. Guy B cold literally just walked past them and they wouldn't have noticed. Had a guy stopped in a vehicle due to an incident, and he was being quite obstructive. After our conversation, I then pointed out to him that the illegal vehicle registration plate needs to be sorted out by him ASAP, otherwise he could find himself getting a ticket in the future. He replied, "Don't you have anything better to do?" My reply, "Sometimes. In fact, whilst I'm here." I was trying to get home from work. It was late and there were no other cars on the road. I thought I was doing 110 on an empty straight freeway that I drove every day. I got pulled over. The cop says, "You were going too fast." Without thinking I responded with, "For you." Reckless driving ticket dropped to a speeding ticket when I threw myself on the mercy of the court. Ever had someone get a ticket for not updating address on their license? That ticket can pretty much only be talked into. A few years ago, a friend of mine told me that his friend was driving him and a few others guys to go fishing. There's this spot in our town where the speed limit goes from 45-25 as you enter downtown, and cops always wait at the bottom because it's so easy. Anyway, they got pulled over, and I guess it went something like this. "You know why I pulled you over? Why? You were going 50 in a 25. Dang, that's double, isn't it?" Smart guy too. Definitely could have talked his way out of it. One time I was pulled over. Police officer asked me how fast I thought I was going. 75, I reply. He shows me his radar at exactly 75. "Yeah, that's about right," I said back. He just glared at me and wrote me a ticket. Not my brightest moment. See? My friend had just completed an exam. I guess he didn't do so well and he arrived at his car already in a foul mood. Of course, a cop had just finished writing him a ticket for an expired meter, so he goes haywire, complaining. The cop decides to write him another ticket, this one for a broken windshield. My friend really goes ballistic this time, yelling, waving his arms. The cop, of course, writes him a third ticket for a broken tail light, hands my friend all 3 tickets and walks off. My friend angrily goes to open his car door and suddenly realizes that it's not his car. He put all 3 tickets under the windshield wiper and walked off. Freaking legend. I pulled a woman over for 35 in a 25. It was a stretch of road that's easy to speed on, and even I have speed on it not realizing it. I walked up to the car, introduced myself, explained why I pulled her over and asked for the standard license and registration. Heck, I wasn't even going to run it. I just wanted to make sure she had it. As she's fishing around her purse she starts getting really crappy with me and proceeds to tell me her car couldn't even go that fast. Yeah, there were 2 things that I always gave tickets when I came across, criers and flashers. Oh, you think your boobs will get you out a ticket? Wrong. I cry when I'm nervous. Verified on our protect and serve. For the most part I've already decided by the time I've pulled someone over if they are getting a ticket or not. No matter what they say or do will change that. Now if I stop someone who I wasn't going to write and they are drunk or have a license suspension, or are driving outside of license restrictions, they get written. Well, I already knew I was getting a ticket, so I went to rent a Mustang. Coming from a guy who has only driven a Honda Civic 98. 106 HP. I went on the 5 freeway coming from SF to LA. I know I went fast. I won't say how fast, but let's just say WTF. Anyhow, cop pulls me over and goes to me and asks how fast I was going. To be honest, no clue. But I was young and stupid, so I said 92. He paused and then said, "You know what? I'll go W that," and gave me a ticket at that speed. Used to be a security guard at casino. I've had multiple times where we've had to call the cops, but one really sticks out. Woman was a regular customer. Got a little drunk and we had to cut her off. Washington doesn't allow people who appear intoxicated to continue drinking or gamble. She was having none of it. She started screaming at the shift manager, and she was asked to leave. She screamed louder and didn't want to leave. The police were called to get her out, and long story short, she ended up getting tied up with restraining straps and carried out of the casino. A cutoff doesn't mean you have to leave. Just be chill and you can still hang out, drink sodas and eat and watch TV with your friends. It sucks because I'm pretty sure this woman ended up with at least one felony, fighting police. I'm fairly certain I talked myself into a speeding ticket because I was in a crappy mood and pee off the police officer. 4 years later, my dad talked me out of a major citation from a friend's senior prank. Could have been a felony charge. Wound up with something crazy silly like jaywalking. 12 years later, completely different outlook on police officers. I'm willing to delay my travel to thank them for their service. It's better to have them on your side than to not. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.